All right, guys, it is
So loud.
so loud. Announcer voice. I get my. Sometimes I think like I'm like, what's that? Bruce Buffer? I think it is.
Bruce Buffer, you get ready to rumble.
Get ready. I want to do that sometimes. You guys might be hearing a different voice today.
Yeah.
We got Chef Ken in the building. Is joining us today for table number 8. Welcome, Ken.
Hey, thank you guys for
table.
having me. Yes, appreciate you guys.
I gotta start with something though. I know a lot like lately we've been like talking about, like the weather's been cooperating and all that, right? And I feel like it's like almost every time I bring it up, right? But I gotta say, the weather's like all bad, and the reason why we bring it up because we as Californians, we don't feel like this is normal.
It's not.
Right? Like, that's the only reason why we bring it up, I feel. You know what I mean? And then on top of that, like, Ed always says, like, it's the treachery to get up here. Like, it's a whole
almost every Tuesday.
Dude, I
get a
texted
storm
Roman
every
earlier. I was like, bro, what is
Dolphin
up
noise.
with this weather, man? And he's like, every Tuesday.
Dolphin noise.
And now if we get rain, it's not just rain, it's like a storm, right? It like comes along with crazy winds and everything else.
Well, the news is calling it Terrible Tuesdays.
Is there?
ABC News is like, "Are everyone ready for another Terrible Tuesdays?"
Feels like that's every
It
Tuesday.
really is.
I mean, shoot, the last 2 Tuesdays, we've lost power up here, where we've had to like grab food, put it in like the Yeti freezer, and then like bring it down because we're not sure if we have to like, because everyone sees like where we live.
Yeah.
Like the basically, if we don't have power, then we don't like none of our stuff works. No water, no electricity, like we no Wi-Fi, no cellular, so we got to go down.
Oh my God, what do we do as Californians with this no power?
Oh, my God. We're going to lose our minds.
What?
All right. So, anyway. We do have Chef Ken joining us. Chef Ken. I feel like I have to say Chef Ken because like
No, you don't have to.
actually Mike has been like drilled it in my head, like if anybody has like chef in front of it, you always say Chef Ken out of respect, right?
I appreciate that.
Like because like doctor, the same thing, like Chef
but
Ken.
you know what? No
like,
need for that. No need for that.
Trainer Mike and Trainer Ed.
so yeah, I just want to kind of break down like who you are and what you do.
Yeah. Well, I am a chef, obviously. I run a catering company out of San Francisco. We do weddings, we do private dinners. Pretty much, we bring the restaurant experience to you guys. I feel like a lot of restaurants. I feel like that's kind of the trend that's going down. I mean, people still always want to go out and eat, but I feel like a lot of people want to do more private dining nowadays. Especially after the pandemic, they don't want to be around a lot of people. And you have a dinner at the comfort of your own house, makes things a little more enjoyable. You don't have to find parking, have to deal with screaming babies.
That's my favorite.
You get to drink as much as you want and all that. So, it's a lot of people are kind of catching on to it. And I feel like that's kind of the new up and coming in the restaurant industry.
So, why did you want to join the table today?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like I'm around a bunch of entrepreneurs. Maybe I can learn something from you guys. Maybe you guys can learn something from me. It's nice to kind of be heard and all that as entrepreneurs. A lot of times we don't know who to talk to because a lot of people don't understand what we go through and how our mind thinks. So being on the table, with you guys, I feel like we can kind of understand each other on on a work purpose and all that.
No, I love that you say that because I always think of like doing this podcast as like we get to do it.
Yes.
Like
absolutely.
It's a privilege type of thing because not a lot of people get the opportunity to do stuff like this.
Right.
So which is actually one of our topics, like one of the great things of being an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. And actually this is something that me and Mike talked about as we prep for our the table call. So I'm gonna just throw it over to Mike and kind of set the context over the topic, and let's just get right into the topic number 1.
Yeah.
Which we're going
Backwards.
Yeah. That's definitely not topic number 1.
That is actually topic number 3.
That is the last one.
But we are going backwards today.
Typical.
Yeah.
I mean, so I think when people think about what the best part of entrepreneur is, everyone always talks about schedule, or like, oh, it must be so like you must be so happy that you get to create your own schedule and like do all this other stuff, or have like the freedoms and everything that people think comes with being an entrepreneur. In reality, I mean, my business celebrates 10 years this week, right? So it'll be at 10 years.
That's crazy.
Primal
Celebrate
Canine.
10 years this year.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So like it's been now I have a little more freedom in my schedule, but I found a way, being the consistent entrepreneur that I am, to fill that time with more businesses or more podcasts, or like more things to do. So I mean, you don't really get the freedom to have an easy schedule.
No.
I mean, you can make the choice to have an easy schedule, but that's going to directly hinder your income, what your productivity levels are going to be, your execution, all those other things. So I think the freedom, or the best part about being an entrepreneur, is kind of the freedom to kind of direct yourself and push yourself to any heights or levels that you want to. The ability to be like, I don't, at a regular job, you can have a ceiling. You can be a general manager, you can be a AM or whatever, you can be a CEO, you can be this, but there's a ceiling in that aspect of things. But when you're an entrepreneur and you start your own company, or companies like we have, you can kind of, you dictate where your ceiling is or what you want to do. So you have that freedom in order to do it. Does it come with a cost? Absolutely. Is it 7 days a week? For us, like, especially like in one of our fields, one of the fields, like especially the one me and Ed are in with dogs, it's 7 days a week, 24/7. This is what you're doing. And I'm assuming that's a lot like everything else, like everyone else that we're doing, whether it's media, whether it's cooking, whether it's, real estate, whether it's, property management, whatever, all the things that we do. It is essentially a 7 day a week job. And in order to be successful, at least in my opinion, a successful entrepreneur, you have to be passionate about either what you do or why you're doing
Absolutely.
it. So instead of being like, I'm just going to go to this job to get a paycheck,
Right.
or to, do this. And I kind of like what I'm doing, but it's just a paycheck. It's not as fulfilling as I feel when it comes to like, like, for example, Tuesdays I'm pretty strung out because of the work week I have prior that goes into media day. So
I wanted to ask you today, Mike. I was like, Mike, are you okay?
I was just tired, man. Like,
Never. Okay.
well, so like
Always and
for everybody,
never.
like we've mentioned before, like my schedule essentially on Tuesday is, it goes through the whole week. Then I have my daughter from Sunday to Tuesday, and like I'm a helicopter parent, so I rarely sleep in the middle of the night because I'm always worried about my kid.
What? What's it called?
Helicopter parent.
Helicopter
So I'm like
parent.
always like making sure my kid's okay. Like and I wake up early anyway, so I get like 2 or 3 hours of sleep. And then we go into media day where it's podcast, content. So I end up being a little bit more tired by the time it comes to the table, which is why I gotta like save my social energy battery. So to do it, so I can talk like this for you guys. So, but I mean, I think the beauty and the best part about being an entrepreneur is essentially having the freedom to kind of dictate what your own path is.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the greatest part about it. But you do pay a cost for that. So for those who think about entrepreneurship as being this like glamorous life of, being able to pick your own schedule. Yeah, you get to pick your own schedule, but you have to make your schedule complicated because you have to work twice, if not more times as hard than the person that's working for the job to get exactly what you want on your own terms.
Yeah, solid. I really think one part of it that you said, Mike, that really related is doing something you're passionate about, right?
Yeah.
For most people I know, and there's some people that have a job and they love it and they love what they do, but for most people, even if they love pieces of it, there's a lot that they don't love about it, what they do every day. And I think that's kind of what helps you drive it. And I think there is a part of it, at least for me, where you do all this, you work 7 days a week and tons of crazy hours to get to a point where you can build that kind of freedom, right? And sometimes you become so passionate about what you're doing that you just keep it, even when you don't have to, when you could cut back. But I think the goal is always, at least for me, is finding a way to, hey, take all this grind, keep growing with it, keep changing a little bit, and turn it into something a little bit more free.
Definitely.
But definitely when it's something you're passionate about, it is itself its own sense of freedom.
I mean, like, I think that, what Roman was saying too is like when you take all this grind, like, and then you can kind of go and do something else. It's also, I think what's cool about it and like being passionate about it is you can share that passion with other people who are coming in. So you can take what you're doing. I'm like, all right, cool. Now you can go in place and do this. I can go ahead and develop this and go to that, kind of similar to what we do in dog training. It's like, we could build this stuff up, build Primal. I can be like, all right, guys, you guys manage this. We're going to go ahead and do Canine U, War Room, friggin' the table, the drinks and dogs, whatever name, countless other things we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, Ken, you want to jump in, or Ed?
I mean, absolutely. I think passion is number one. You have to, you have to really want to do this, you know, as an entrepreneur. You can't, you know, people are always like, oh, I want to make money. I want to make money. Everybody wants to make money, you know, but for me, money is a byproduct of my success. You know, I'm not doing this to make money. Yes, it's important for me because I have to eat, I have to pay bills and all that. But my number one reason why I got into this was my passion for cooking, and also secondly, I found a problem in the industry. You know, everybody goes to weddings. Wedding food is crap. It shouldn't be crap. You know, people are paying so much money for this, and you know, why can't they get good food? You know, why can't they have an amazing dining experience for a wedding? You know, so that's one of the reasons why I did this. And you know, everybody loves food. Who doesn't like food?
Yeah. I mean, like for me, like I would like say, like I mean, filming is something, you know, really that I'm passionate about. But I think for me, the best part of being an entrepreneur is really just living on my terms.
Yeah.
You know, I started out by saying like, hey, you know, we get to do this podcast. Like it's a privilege. Yeah. And I feel like it's a privilege to run a business, to have the opportunity to do it. But, you know, going along like, oh, it's just not like a schedule thing, but more or less like I get to do it on my own terms. Yeah. No, like, I don't know if me and Mike talk about this a lot. Like, we have a problem with authority.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
same with me.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And I'm not saying, like, police or anything like that. I'm just saying, like, you know, I never, like, when teachers would tell me things to do, like, I was like, yeah, like, okay. Like, you know, parents, like, always had this, you know, we talk about a lot of cultural expectations, like, oh, you should go to school and do this, da, da, da. I don't like that. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, this like part of who I am, where it's like I gotta do this on my own terms. I can't listen to nobody. And you know, I work like retail jobs, like, you know, right out of college and things like that. And on that note is like I always wanted to build something that that I can, like, you know, show my passion and have that, you know, collaboration versus like, oh, you're my employee type of thing, with other people, with other like-minded people to do this, you know, to, again, like we talk about passion, like if you're passionate about directing, let's work together, you know, so we can like produce something that is actually really nice, you know. But yeah, I love that we can pick and choose who we work with. I think that's another cool thing about, you know, being an entrepreneur, the collaboration aspect of it. But yeah, I mean, those are probably like my top, you know, just to live on our own terms and get to choose who we get to work with. And to be quite honest, like when it comes to like Canine U stuff, like that's why we're doing this together. Like we all chose to do this together as a you know, friends first and foremost. But we saw like, hey, we have all these, you know, things that are common for a common goal. Like why can't we do this together? You know, we chose this lifestyle and chose to do it together. So I really enjoy that part of it, you know. So Ed.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole working together thing is totally different from like a 9 to 5 too. Sorry, I don't think I could look that way and speak in this, but
break his neck.
I'm gonna make the audio sound good.
Ed is like, we got another Chinese man here today, thank God.
We got more representation. But yeah, I think one of the fun parts of being an entrepreneur is like the efforts that you put into your business almost like directly influences how your business is going to do. Absolutely. Versus like a 9 to 5. I mean, maybe not all 9 to 5s, but you know, there's some lazy people, some people that bust ass. But even if you bust ass, it's like depending who's above you, that's going to control if you move up or get more pay, right? But for us, I feel like if you put way more effort into either the marketing or the business side of your stuff, you can see those numbers kind of change that week, that month, whatever. And I think that's like the fun chase part of the business.
Yep. It becomes addictive almost.
Yes.
It's like a high of some sort.
Yeah, and then if you're lazy, it's only going to affect you. It's not like you're still going to get that same paycheck if you're lazy, if you're in your business.
Yeah, I mean, the harder you work at what you do, the more you're going to reap the benefits of it. Whereas a 9 to 5, harder where you work, you might not get compensated for your hard work, you know. So I think that's one of the main highlights of being an entrepreneur is the amount of work you put into it dictates how much you're going to earn or how successful you are.
I think that's a really good point, since like entrepreneurs kind of been like the 2000s rapper. You know, everyone wanted to be a rapper, you know, but like entrepreneurship, like, you know, because it's all glamorized, especially with social media. But, you know, just like what Ed and what Chef was saying, like, you know, it's very much like your results are for the like 99%, unless you get some like picked up for something, blown up on social media viral or whatever, like your efforts are directly correlated to your success.
Yeah, I mean, I think I really like hearing what you guys have to say about like your passion, and I think it's easy to say. I don't say easy to say. I would say like I can speak for everybody that we all love what we do, right? Which I think to bring up the topic what Mike said about like, hey, you get to share this passion with other people, and which is going to actually be the next topic is like how we communicate, how we translate that to other people. And I think the question is like how or why is it important to communicate to other people when you're in business? Because in my opinion, you have to be able to translate a common goal, right? If you don't have a common goal, like an end point, like end in mind, no matter how much you communicate to them, it's going to get lost, in my opinion, right? It's like you're trying to get from point A to point B. If I can't communicate that with you, then there's an issue, right? So, Raman.
Yes, sir.
How important is communication in business?
I think it's key, but there's actually the more important part. I think every business or like a new project, even, if it's something small, starts off with communication, right? Everybody has this goal and this is what we're going to do and this will be the numbers and it's all exciting. But really where those stuff fail is when the communication kind of cuts, as time goes, whether it's, unscheduled, like there's nothing really scheduled or scheduled changes and you guys aren't continuously talking about that goal. Where it's just, you go back and you look at it, oh yeah, 6 months ago that we said we're going to do this. Well, times change and most people set like these really big goals for this is what we're going to do for a year, but nobody really thinks about what's going to happen this month, this week, these days, right? And I know that, through the different businesses I've been in, working with people, working under people, the most I've been successful is where it's metrics, right? Every day we're looking at, hey, how much of this is done? What do we do every week? When it always relates back to, kind of where my forte is, the whole real estate stuff. Like when I started killing it and doing well in real estate and buying off market properties is when we were looking at every single day, how many phone calls went out, how many offers were made, how much time was spent. And then every week looking at, okay, this week we did these many calls. These are how many properties we got. And then at the end of the month, it always correlated. Not one month showed different. Like if we had more calls that month, we bought more properties. So it's really based on kind of what you do every single day in relation to like the outcome of that goal. And I think most businesses at one point or another it gets lost. And it's just like how fast you kind of come back to it, get back on track. And focus on the smaller picture, the days and the weeks and the months. I almost feel like yearly goals and, what's going to happen in 5 years are so irrelevant because all that matters is what you're focusing on, day to day, week to week, month to month.
Yeah, I mean, so to clarify, follow-up question is the communication aspect with you and your team is really about like looking at metrics and be like, hey, the goal is to do, close more business or get more houses like closed. But how you do that is by looking at your metrics.
Yeah, it's like, let's say, the goal is to get 6 off-market properties a month, right? And, for me, I know that what that looks like is 80 to 100 calls a day. Sheesh. Yeah, talking on the phone for 3 hours. So it sounds funny. It's like, oh, what are you talking about? But it's like literally if you have 3 to 4 hours of conversation that day and you're making 5 offers every day, you're going to get about 6 houses a month. Like I can pretty much guarantee that to anyone. And anybody doing less, I've been around a lot of other people buying off market property. Nobody really is hitting more numbers than that if they're not having that much talk time or at least offers put out.
Yeah. Okay. Ed, we're gonna go.
Man, skip me on this one. Let me think a little bit.
All right. Okay.
Pass it on to somebody.
Okay. Pass it on to somebody. Yeah.
All right, Ken.
I finally have another Chinese man.
All right.
Because I already have an idea of what they might say, but
Okay.
to you or to hear it from you, it'll be something fresh.
So communication is key with any anybody you work with. We're communicating right now, trying to get our voice heard. But communication is, I think, huge if you want to have a set goal or you want your team to, meet your goal. With communication, I feel like you have to kind of learn about who you're talking to. So if I'm talking to G and I'm trying to communicate to him, I have to learn how he thinks.
I hate your answer.
Why?
Because you took my answer.
Because
go for it.
Because everybody thinks differently. Everybody's raised differently. So they all have different upbringing. They all have different mindsets. One thing that got me to be kind of successful at marketing was I read a book called 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's been around forever. It talks about you gotta learn about the person you're communicating with, what their motives are, what their goals are, and then kind of when you communicate with them, work towards how to achieve their goals at the same time as achieving my goals. So it's all about how to find how to relate to the person. If you want to get more sales, what is his motive of getting sales? Money. So if he just wants money, then you're like, all right, let me just give him a bunch of accounts, see if he can handle it. If he wants to learn how to do certain things, then you educate him, and then you kind of find a common motive where you guys both win. That's kind of how I've learned to communicate with the people I work with, communicate with my clients, communicate with anybody, is to kind of just learn from the person and how they think and how they were brought up.
I like that answer. I feel like, like I said, it's totally my answer. But I also feel like, when it comes to like a non-employee, I feel like it's the same way with literally any type of relationship that you have, business or personal or whatever, family, anything. I think, finding a way to get to them is like the heart of being an entrepreneur, because we're all problem solvers at the end of the day. And I feel like that kind of comes down to like problem solving. Mm-hmm. Like, what does how can I help this person get to the same goal as you mentioned? I feel like that's like a unlock that a lot of people like, I feel like don't see, especially when it comes to sales. Mm-hmm. It's like, a lot of people say finding an angle in a sense, mm-hmm. But that sounds a little more cynical in a sense, but it's really just solving a problem. Like, what does it mean to them, and how can you leverage that to help them?
Yes.
Right. To get back to the goal that you have. Mm-hmm. Right. So I like that answer a lot. I feel like, when it comes to personal stuff, like that's where real relationships like kind of thrive. And when it comes to business side of things, that's where I feel like you can really win if you know how to properly communicate on that level. So, and I'll go last on Ed because he needs to think. But
I got it now, actually. I'm ready.
All right, let's go then.
Well, let's bounce off of how you're talking about how it can be like for non-business relationships too.
Yeah.
I think communicating, you need it on both ends where both people equally speak up. Because I feel like in a lot of business / personal, there's somebody that's going to like just go with the flow. And I feel like after you go with the flow too much, sometimes they're like, say you're like 6 months in, going with the flow, and you're like, man, I really hated all those things that I agreed with. So I think it's better if somebody just speaks up in the beginning rather than like sweep it under the floor and let it build up. And I think that can, go any way, personal or business, and it can benefit anybody to do that.
100%.
Go for it, Mike.
Oh, great. No, I mean, everything you guys said is pretty much like, spot on. I mean, it's kind of what you're saying, Chef, is like, you have to know your audience, right? Like, and no matter what arena that you're communicating in, you kind of have to know your audience, who you're speaking to, whether it's sales, whether it's your partners in business, whether it's, people working for you. You have to understand who they are in order so you can communicate the most effective level, right? I think in personal relationships, people, kind of wonder why I'm as transparent as I am, and that's one of the main reasons is, personal relationships, I'd rather be as transparent as I can be so people can understand like exactly what to expect from me or what I would expect, versus from them. And that's why transparency is always key. Kind of like what Ed was saying, you don't want to be like the person 6 months later where people either assume that you're quiet and you don't really care, or that you're just holding back things, and eventually you're just like, well, dolphin noise this. Like I'm kind of done with this thing. You know, and in that way, in a personal relationship and business, you know, one thing I've kind of learned over the years is, in the beginning, I would always be very vocal as far as what the goals I had and what the things I was working on, and I was like constantly like, okay, well, we're doing this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this, and I noticed that it did a couple of different things, or a few different things to my staff or the people that I was working with. Either one, they'd be like, oh heck yeah, that's cool, and they'd get all giddy for a little bit, you know, a little bit of motivation, and then it kind of, you know, it fizzles out for a little bit when they don't see the plans come to action in the time frame that they thought that was going to happen, right? And then it comes up later, and they've already kind of fizzled. The other one, they can be intimidated by the, you know, the grandeur of the goal. Now they're kind of hitting back like, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if it's something like is going there. Or the third part about it too, what I found out real common in the last year or so, or a couple of years, is a specific amount of jealousy that happens within, you know, within a small group of people, like where it's like, well, you got that, so like why can't I? You know, something has happened. So I've learned that it's in the leadership role that I have is that, you know, there's things to share with certain people, there's things to keep back until it's ready to come out, and then you say it and then it's done, right? So like there's those people that say like work in silence, and in certain cases you should work in silence, but in some cases it's better to talk about what you wanted to do, especially when you're looking at it in the leadership role, in order to incentivize people to either work harder or kind of gauge it where it's happening, right? So seeing those different things in partnerships, when it comes to business partnerships, you know, I think communication is vastly important, you know, which is why we typically try to talk at least once a week, or at least have some form of conversation, and that way we can kind of continuously stay on the ball and continuously, you know, keep that snowball effect rolling. Because, you know, like what Ed was saying even earlier when it came to, you know, the entrepreneurship, you know, you get what you put in. So, you know, typically, you know, I've, you know, kind of been like the pusher a little bit, like in the group where I'm like, all right, like we'll do this, so we can kind of constantly roll. But I mean, I think the communication aspect in any relationship, business, personal, whatever level of, you know, that is vastly important. You know, that's how, you know, life essentially should be. And that's coming from me, who dogs essentially taught me how to communicate over a decade ago. So
it's funny you say the personal stuff, because it's like, you know, I don't know what I was listening to earlier. They were saying something along the lines of like, there should be like some people dating only for a couple of weeks, but they end up dating for like years, and they're like, wait a minute, I don't really want this, you know? Yeah. You know, like I was like, yeah, you don't want to end up in that situation, not only on the dating side, right, but like literally anything. Yeah. Literally any type of relationship. Like, I feel like people are just get too comfortable in a sense.
They settle.
Yeah, they settle. And like, or they maybe too scared to speak up, or maybe too like, all right, it'll work out, you know, we just keep at it, you know? And I think just in a general, like, you know, maybe this is a general blanket statement, but I feel like if people are more cognitive of how they feel and what they want to communicate and just communicate, I think we could have a better world. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, I think in general too, it's like, because kind of what you're describing is like the honeymoon phase, right? Like in any relationship, whether it's your business, personal, whatever, there's that excitement, there's that, you know, that honeymoon phase where it's like, oh, we don't really mind the work at that point because we're so enthralled with what's happening. But once that honeymoon phase goes off, I mean, in any relationship, you know, in personal relationships, whether you're fiance, girlfriend, boyfriend, married, not married, whatever the hell they call it nowadays, you know, it's you know, I don't want to defend anybody.
Situationship.
Situations, current status. But like, you know, it's always work. It's always work, and no matter how good the relationship, people have to put in the effective amount of work. So communication is part of that work. Communicating how you feel, communicating and understanding, or listening to someone else's version of communication. It's always work, and I think that's where people fall off. You know, we talk about the laziness that our culture is now developing. You know, it's also the same thing where people just get too much easy access to voice how they feel instead of listening. Yeah. You know, it's like, oh, I'm just gonna go online and write a tirade about how I feel about this or whatever, instead of like actually taking in information and being like, oh, you know, so communication is work, and that's part of every relationship, and it should be.
You know, say 2 years, you know, you have 2 ears and one mouth for a reason type of thing. You know, it's like a fact of life where it's like you're not learning if you're talking.
Yes.
Right. You know?
100%.
Yeah. All right. So you don't sleep, Ken.
No, I mean I sleep. I sleep. Sleep is so valuable as I get older. When I was young, I could go party for 3 days in a row without any sleep. Now it's like I get up, I'm tired.
I think you're the oldest one here.
Am I?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm turning 39.
What a way to just like blow
Yeah,
someone's
way
spot up.
Seriously.
Call him out,
Hey,
yeah.
Hey, the older you get, the wiser you are.
39
man.
years
Like,
of
shit,
wisdom
like, yeah.
and stupidity and.
Well, we're gonna last topic for the table today is confrontation. This is something I feel like early on in business and or maybe not even say two, like 3-4 years ago, I would avoid confrontation. I don't think anybody likes confrontation.
Yeah.
And I mean that on both ends, especially in business, right? The question is for the table is, how do we as entrepreneurs deal with competition? Because it's gonna happen one way or another, right? And like recently, like Raman, if you don't mind me just kind of putting this out there, me and Raman kind of got into it recently, but I think I called him and we're like, yo, like this happened and this happened, like we had this common goal of like, all right, we got to do something here. We got to get the tasks that we're collectively working on, and having that common goal in mind, we hashed it out. And I think, in my opinion, confrontation is absolutely necessary to push the goal, right? And I would even follow that up with sometimes, if not most times, like confrontation leads to maybe even better relationship because you're voicing your opinions. And I feel like even when it comes to clients, the harder I've worked on them with, like the harder clients that I've had are actually now my best clients because we've communicated each other's points, right? But when it comes to confrontation, I mean, how do you guys deal with it? Anybody want to just jump in?
I mean, I think confrontation can kind of have like a weird, like when you hear it, like you get like a weird feeling to it, right?
Yeah.
I think it all kind of falls into like levels of communication, right? Like sometimes you have to be, sometimes you're the hammer, sometimes you're the nail, like that's just kind of where it's going to go. Like sometimes someone has to be like, you have to speak up as far as what your thought process is. And, I think the most important thing when it comes to a confrontation is if it's in the business setting and it's something where people don't really like, maybe not be understanding of certain things, is like you have to listen to the person that maybe has those concerns and then listen back versus get defensive and be like be protective over something. Where it's, if you have the same goal, then it's not really like a confrontation. It's more of just like an elevated level of discussion or a debate, right?
Yeah.
And then if you're passionate about something, then it's just going to escalate into a specific manner. Whereas if it's the way I view confrontation is in like a form of like disrespect, right? Where they're like, in the dog training field, you get a lot of people who are very passionate about their animals, like it's their babies, it's all this other stuff, and their uncle's been having dogs for 30 years, or they've been raised around dogs, and they have all this diluted self-confidence and understanding what dogs are, so they're very coming in a very defensive way in the beginning when they come to learn about or come to train their dogs. They're like, oh, I get that, I understand that, and then you kind of have to wear them down a little bit and share like some information gradually and kind of go into it. Then you get some people who are just like, well, my dog, I mean, I've had a conversation. It's actually funny. There's a Yelp review on our page where someone said that I only show up to work to throw tantrums, which is not real, like at all. I'll give you the background story. And
Mike, why do you do that, Mike?
Yeah.
God damn.
It's going to be a good story when they say it's coming from a Yelp review.
I know.
So this is a true confrontation, in my opinion. Like, this was confrontation. There was a person. I'm not going to give whatever is it, binary, what the hell, what are these people calling it now? The gender,
He,
whatever.
she, they.
Yeah, it was a porpoise.
A porpoise?
I don't know. It's
What?
a thing. A turtle. They identify as a turtle. I don't. Going down. But anyways, so this person was being a jerk to my staff. So it escalated to the management. Management's Aaron being a jerk to the management because just essentially they weren't putting in work at home with the dog. They were coming to lessons. They did a board and train, They weren't holding it accountable, weren't doing anything. They were not following up. They basically thought the dog was going to be some programmable robot. They wanted us to, like, where it states in our contract, we don't do home visits or anything like that. They wanted us to bend over, and they're being rude. So finally, it escalated to the point where they had to talk to me. Myself, I'll be 100% transparent in this. Is like, if someone, I can take a lot until I can't take anymore. And then when I can't take anymore, then like my tone will shift. I won't be as nice as and accommodating as I typically will, because as a business owner, you want to diffuse, right? You never want to confront and be like, no, you're wrong, you know, you're dumb, blah, blah. You don't want to do that, right? You have to diffuse the situation in order to get a proper outcome, because again, you're dealing with someone who's a little more defensive already coming into it. So, you know, I started off the conversation with like, okay, I understand what you're saying. I was like, but we can't do that. This is what we can do. We've already done this. We've already done extended stays. We've already offered more lessons. We've already had multiple conversations. We've already done this. We just can't do this one thing. And the reason why we can't do it, it's not because we don't want to. It's because it's not for the benefit of your dog and your relationship. Didn't take it, didn't care, raised her voice, said a bunch of mean things, to finally where I was just like, you're being very disrespectful. Mm-hmm. I was like, you know, this is the time, you know, I said it, you know, said a few times, definitely way. I interrupted her, cut her off. Oh, dang it. I interrupted, I cut it off a bunch of times, and I finally just like had enough. And then it went into return where I was just finally, it was like, you know, the person on the other end was like, well, you're just being, you know, rude and disrespectful. I was like, no, I'm just being the same way that you've been to myself, my staff, and because I've heard conversations with this person on speakerphone while they're talking to other ones, and, you know, we've recorded some stuff. So I'm like, I was like, now I'm like, you're being rude. It's like, so I'm just treating you the way that you've been treating us. I was like, and she's like, well, you know, this is like, you know, this is unprofessional. I was like, well, you've been very unprofessional as well. You know, it's all been documented, so we're fine here. And then they write this is the part I talk about when it comes to like people having too much freedom of speech. Yes, I said it. Yeah, like, you know, have the ability to, you know, write things. Is like, then you can go out and you can blatantly go out and lie about something because you are unhappy with that. So it's become, we are kind of in a system where confrontation with clientele, you do kind of have to take that, like, you kind of just kind of have to take it on the chin a couple of times. Mm-hmm. But I do think that there becomes a specific level of responsibility, and this is why I'm 100%. Okay, I think Yelp should have a reverse Yelp as well, where you can
anti-Yelp.
No, I think there should be a Yelp where you give people Yelp scores, and if you don't get it, and if you get a bunch of 1 star for being a crappy client, then people can have the right to refuse service to you. And I think that should be, there should be, if there's a way to communicate this negative experience that you thought you had, or you were just unhappy because someone didn't bend over backwards for you, and you can write these things about them, you should be able to get things written back about you too. The person that owns the business should not be the one that always gets taken advantage of just because we're afraid to lose clients because someone might spread false stuff about you. So I believe that there should be some form of back end on that when it comes to confrontation. So I think confrontation in business with clientele, obviously you guys all know, being entrepreneurs, it's a very weird tightrope walk, right? When it comes to business partners and even in personal relationships, I think my business relationships and personal relationships are similar in a sense because I'm a different person with the people that I work with, who are like you guys, for example. You guys get to see essentially who I really am all the time. And then, you know, same thing with my fiance, they get to see like, you know, who I am. And then people I work with, they kind of see the same thing. And, you know, people outside of that don't. And then I'm a different person in that sense because of the transparency aspect of it when it comes to those things. So confrontations with these guys, I don't say confrontations with, you know, with my fiance, it's just elevated levels of communication in a sense, because obviously I'm passionate about certain things. We have similar goals, so that energy can get brought up a little bit, you know, and it can be escalated a little bit. But as long as you're listening, and as long as you're voicing an opinion and you're listening to an opinion, and you can find that middle ground without getting defensiveness, letting your ego get in the way, letting all these other stuff happen, and it's for the greater cause, whether it's better in a relationship, better in a company, or doing both. You know, that's an important thing when it comes to confrontation.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, like,
damn, I talked forever.
No, you did. I think it's a great story, and I think people should definitely like listen to that. But when it comes to confrontation, like for me, like it's always been like, oh, like I should always avoid it. And I realized like very on, like that's not productive. You know, like it's not productive at all. Like you said, it's like elevated levels of communication. I feel like if I'm not being quote unquote confrontational, it's all in my mind. It's also like I'm not getting my voice out, and if I hold it in, like in hindsight, like it becomes like it's just held in, then it's gonna blow up at one point, and that's when like things go bad, you know. So like again, that goes back to like personal relationships or business relationships too. But Ken, what do you think about confrontation?
Well, I mean,
how do you deal with it?
I mean, I avoid confrontation too, but I don't want to say I completely avoid it. When I come to a situation where confrontation happens, I try to de-escalate it so it's not confrontational. You know, I bring it back down to miscommunication. All right, so there's confrontation and there's miscommunication. So when I bring it back down, now we can talk about it civilly. We can all hash it out because I feel like confrontation comes with ego, comes with like emotions, and that's when things get bad. When you think with emotions and your ego, that's when shit goes wrong. You know, when you bring it back down to miscommunication, then you're all on a plain level field. You're thinking right-minded, and then you're able to kind of talk with each other, you know, about what is going on. What did I miss? What haven't I been able to help you achieve? Because, you know, we all sometimes are misunderstood. And that goes back to thinking about who you're talking to and how they think, you know. It's not about avoiding confrontation. It's about how to bring it back down to the points where we can all think straight and, you know, all that.
Yeah.
You know, I actually really like Chef Ken's point there because I think there is confrontation. There's goods and bads to it, and then there's definitely miscommunication. So I think it's learning over time, you know, and identifying what is what, knowing when you should be at, you know, let's say that lower level and be that person apologizing or that person knowing that, hey, you know, I did this wrong. But then I think it's always important to speak up. And I think for me, over time, I've definitely been more of a person that does speak up because of the field of work that I do, but also just with, you know, different businesses and partnerships. I'm pretty straightforward with saying kind of my thoughts and what I think's kind of going on. Like I know on my day-to-day, you know, when I'm working with sellers, like, you know, and the reason why I think I've been able to do well with phone sales and real estate sales is because I tell people like, hey, you know, like, where'd you get that price from? Like, kind of wild, right? And nobody else does, right? Most people are trying to play that friendly side. And then when somebody sees that you're real about it, you kind of earn their respect. So I think it's important too, like when it comes to businesses, partnerships, you know, relationships, to be that person that speaks up, because most people don't. I would say that, you know, from when you see in the scale, like 95% are not going to speak up. So when you are that person, you're kind of that authority figure, and, you know, you actually help progress things rather than it just kind of stay under. Because most of the time when people aren't communicating, they're not speaking up, things just kind of keep going by, right, day by day. And it's just, I think Ed mentioned something about it earlier, but it just kind of gets brushed under, and then 6 months pass by and it's a different situation than you thought, just because you let it be
what it is.
Yeah, I think depending on the type of confrontation, it comes with like a different type of communication too, right? You have to like see what fits best for that situation. And I think, well, for me personally, I feel like in business stuff, I'm almost on the more like rash side of the hammer part, where I'm like, I'm just tell them straight up, like hella blunt or whatever. And sometimes I'll message other people like, hey, should I say it like this? And then they kind of like tell me, no, tone that shit down a little bit. But then I think on a business side, that's how I am. But then for personal, like whether that's like dating relationship or with my parents, I try to avoid confrontation. I'm like, hell no, I just push that shit back for how long. So yeah, for me, there's two different sides, and there's like two different ways that I go about it. And then I also think I can learn from both sides, where one, I need to be more confrontational, and then the other side, I need to be more, what do you say, empathetic? Yeah.
Okay. Well, you have Asian parents, so you can't be confrontational.
No, I just feel like with that side, it's just, you'll never win.
No, you'll never win.
I think with that, it's very much a time, right? Like sometimes, you know, you have to strive, like even with the relationship, and I think a lot of people don't like accepting this, but with the relationship, whether it's a significant other or parents, you have to play a game almost like a business. Like you can't just, if you want to change somebody's mindset, you know, you have a spouse and you guys see difference on opinions, whatever it is, like you have to play a slow game. And, you know, it's a sale. I had my mentor who taught me sales. Literally, I had to, you know, I funded a deal, and we had to take all of our savings that my wife and I had, and we invested it. Yeah. And when that whole deal came up, the one thing he taught me, he said, hey, today, you know, you got to go talk to your wife about it, make sure she's on the same page. This is going to be your biggest sale kind of in your life, because this is gonna change the trajectory of how you guys see on things. So you have to sometimes treat it as a sale, whether it's your parents, whether it's your spouse, and play the long game sometimes, just like we do when we're working sales in our business.
You know, it's always funny that like sometimes I hear couples like, oh, we don't fight. You know what I question? It's like, how long you guys been together? Like how good is this relationship actually?
Or who's just not communicating.
Well, in personal relationships, you have to fight. You know, with your significant other, you know, you have to fight because, you know, it's different than business, because business is business and dating is personal, you know, and especially when you're in personal relationships, you know, you're trying to mesh two lives together, not just two bank accounts together, you know.
That's true.
You're
That's
saying
a
it's not
good point.
transactional.
It's not transactional, you know.
Yeah, you don't just move on.
Exactly.
Catches back up.
You don't just move on, you know, and all that. But you know, it's you know, personal relationships are you know, a little more tricky. You know, I feel like you know, I do treat my clients like, you know, friends and family. You know, I talk to them. You know, I get to know them. You know, and that's what brings clients back, you know, and I feel like that's great. You got to build a relationship with them, you know. But, you know, as a personal relationship, you can't just like be like, oh, I don't want to work with you anymore.
You're fired.
You're fired.
I mean, you
know?
could.
You know, you could.
It's called divorce. It's called breaking
is.
up.
And divorce,
But,
divorce is very transactional.
but, yeah.
I can vouch for that.
Okay. Well, I guess I haven't gotten to that point yet.
Don't. Do not.
But, that's a losing transaction.
Yes. Yes, very much so.
But yeah, you know, I feel, you know, it's different between personal and business, and you know, people always say don't mix, you know, business with pleasure, or you know, with personal. But you know, I feel like sometimes we do have to as business owners, because you know, they are not because they're the ones paying your bills, but they're the ones that you're helping as well. You know, so you want to be able to help them as much as possible, whatever it is, you know.
Cool. Well, that has been. I keep going into like.
Wait, I have a last question, because I told Ed I'd ask this. So we want to get your opinion on air fryers, because I've been trying to. I'm trying to convince Ed, and I just try to convince Ed to go buy one.
All right, so in the beginning, I hate air fryers, because I'm just like, why is there another fucking appliance on the table? Oops, sorry, my bad. Dolphin noise. But my roommate has one, and I've used it a couple of times, and I'm just like, okay, this is kind of cool.
Right?
Yes. So,
Dude, those things are awesome.
I do like.
Why,
I
are
just
you
don't like.
anti-air fryer?
Oh no, because you know how like my warehouse, I don't have like actual cooking appliances.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was like, get an air fryer. I was thinking about it.
Dude,
I
Erin made
imagine-
freaking McChickens, like protein. You know the protein thing I sent you guys?
Yeah.
Like she like used the ground chicken, like made like the whole mixture, and then like 10 minutes,
in there.
and like it was like a full blown like healthy protein like thing with McChicken.
Exactly. That's what I was trying to convince Ed. I was like, you could cook everything in there,
Yeah.
and it's
No.
kind of convenient. You know, that's
It's
the other part of it. It's
convenient.
convenient.
That's how I
Absolutely.
imagine like how like microwaves were when microwaves first came.
These are the
Right.
new microwaves.
I mean,
Right.
they're kind of like voodoo, because it's like, why does it taste like it's fried? But
Right.
I never understood how they work. I just use it.
Yes. So
All right, we have to buy
I
one.
approve of air fryers. Absolutely.
There you go.
There you go, chef.
From the chef.
All right, guys, that has been episode number 8. We're at number 8. We're gonna hit double digits here soon. But I want to thank Chef Ken for making the drive up here and joining us today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
It was fun.
That was fun.
Maybe we should do this again.
Absolutely.
Maybe with some food next time.
Hey.
That was the original idea that we had.
Hey, we pitched.
Really?
We pitched
Was
the
the idea was to
idea.
have food and
We pitched
talk?
the idea.
Yeah. Me and Roman were like, dude, we could do it on the whatever
The kitchen.
counter thing.
Dude,
The kitchen.
let's make it happen.
All right.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Round
Next
2.
Round 2. There we go. All right, guys. So go ahead and give us a follow on network.ptv on Instagram. You can watch all our episodes on Spotify, or watch on Spotify. Listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you get your podcast from. You can watch it on YouTube. All of our episodes on there. So go ahead and give that, check those out. Mike.
Make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, following on everything. Leave comments, questions, anything you guys want. Make sure you guys are sharing this with your friends. Again, guys, we do this for free. Just make sure you like Chef said earlier, being an entrepreneur can be a little difficult. So having ears, being able to listen to other entrepreneurs who are kind of going through the struggle.
You gotta have ears.
You gotta have ears. Yeah. Secondly, I was right. So go out there and share this with your friends, whether they're entrepreneurs or not. They're just people just trying to learn more and listen to people who go through the same stuff that you're going through. So yeah, leave comments.
Yeah, comment on which air fryer Ed should get for his shop.
Oh yeah.
And what other topics we should do.
There you go.
Oh.
All right, guys. See you
Clap
next
out.
week.